Nuendo external synchronization features offer you various ways to integrate Nuendo with the digital world around us. Its extensive support for all the major formats makes Nuendo an excellent contender when it comes time to work with other devices and playback units. In this movie tutorial, we'll cover the synchronization formats supported by Nuendo, and we'll also learn the basics behind Nuendo's synchronization support. Since Nuendo offers some very advanced synchronization capabilities, this tutorial will serve as a basic hands-on supplement to the more detailed information found within the Nuendo 2.0 manual. If you're new to synchronization, I highly suggest that you thoroughly read over the synchronization chapter in this manual. Most of your options for external sync are within the sync setup window found in the transport menu. Word clock options are set within the properties of your audio interface, since this is a format used specifically to synchronize the sample rates and the audio engine of Nuendo. Sony 9-pin configurations are found within the device setup window. Once your options are set, you enable or disable the online-offline sync modes from the transport using the sync button. This area will also provide you visual feedback on the status of external devices as well as the frame rate and the type of incoming sync signals. Now let's talk a little bit more about the various formats and how to set them up within the options page for various uses within the studio. Nuendo supports several methods for working with external audio and video devices. The primary formats supported are timecode, MIDI clock, machine control, and word clock. There are various ways to transmit and receive each of these formats. First, timecode can be communicated via SMPTE, longitudinal timecode, vertical interval timecode, MIDI timecode, ADAT sync, and Sony 9-pin. To use timecode with Nuendo, you must have an external synchronization device or a MIDI interface to communicate between your computer and whatever it is you're trying to sync with Nuendo. SMPTE, LTC, and VITC use an actual audio signal for the timecode sync. That signal is fed directly into your synchronizer device. This synchronizer device can then communicate directly to Nuendo either via MIDI using MIDI timecode or via a direct USB connection link like the new Nuendo Timebase. The Nuendo manual has some great diagrams and explanations of how to make all the proper connections before you begin the process of setting up the software options. To set up your timecode options, you first choose what source you are receiving from. MIDI timecode is used when you want to use a MIDI interface and MIDI cables between Nuendo and the synchronization device to provide your timecode sync. If Nuendo is going to be the slave, then you choose which MIDI port to receive the timecode in this area here. If Nuendo is going to be the master, then you can choose which MIDI port it will use to transmit the timecode information. Despite reports against MIDI timecode, it is actually a very stable format since the operating system is capable of timestamping every signal received for the timecode, thus providing a very accurate format to work with. Also note that if the device you're trying to sync with Nuendo already has MIDI on it and supports MIDI timecode, then there is no need to use a synchronization device in the middle. Sony 9-pin can be used, but it is not recommended, since it is the least accurate of all methods for communicating timecode. The ASIO positioning protocol, or APP for short, is only available for use if your audio interface supports this and has the built-in compatibility to receive timecode without the need of any synchronization device. The advantage in this is that it allows you to maintain sample-accurate sync with external devices that cannot provide sample-accurate sync. Sample-accurate synchronization is simply the most accurate it can get, since it is measured down to the very sample level of the audio material and the audio engine. The last option, VST System Link, is a unique method found only in Nuendo that allows you to synchronize multiple computers running Nuendo by just using a single mono digital channel. We'll discuss this in more detail in the System Link movie tutorial found in the advanced topic. Next is MIDI clock, which is always transmitted over basic MIDI cables and a MIDI interface. Nuendo will not slave to MIDI clock since it is not considered a high-resolution clock for clocking the entire audio engine and playback within Nuendo. However, Nuendo will transmit MIDI clock so that you can slave other sequencers, drum machines, or other devices that support MIDI clock. You can determine which ports you want to transmit MIDI clock from by simply selecting one of the ports listed in the configuration window. Machine control is next. You can either use Sony 9-pin for your machine control, or again use MIDI with a MIDI interface to transmit MIDI machine control. If you use MIDI machine control, then you'll need to choose the appropriate in and out ports in this area here. If you choose to use Sony 9-pin, then you'll also need to make some setting adjustments within the device setup. Here you can set up access to up to 2 external devices. Although MIDI machine control and Sony 9-pin provide the same basic functionality, there is a difference. MIDI machine control only supports 3 commands: stop, start, and locate. By using Sony 9-pin, you get additional rewind, fast forward, and record commands. If you choose Sony 9-pin, then you also have access to a dedicated transport to control the external device remotely. Choosing one of 2 possible devices you can have connected from the device menu will bring up this new transport. In here, you have your basic transport commands, as well as some special features only found in Sony 9-pin. We'll talk about one of those in just a moment. Finally, word clock options are not available in this sync options window since word clock is not a time-based format. It is a synchronization format used to lock and sync the audio engine and sample rates of both Nuendo and your external devices. However, it is required to use word clock in conjunction with timecode to ensure that both the audio signal and playback position is absolutely in sync with Nuendo and the external devices. Otherwise, you could end up dealing with sync offsets, problems with the audio playback, and all other sorts of issues. You'll generally find your word clock options within the configuration of your audio interface. Here's a quick tip to help further expand on Nuendo's synchronization capabilities. There's a very handy plugin that actually allows Nuendo to generate SMPTE or LTC without the need for an external synchronization generator. This plugin is found in the Tools category, and it's called the SMPTE generator. This plugin actually generates the necessary audio signal needed for proper SMPTE timecode. Set your frame rate and start points, and it will lock directly to the clock within the project you are working on. When you hit start on the transport, it will immediately begin generating the necessary timecode signal. Since you obviously want to send this audio sync signal to your external device rather than having it within your actual mix, all you do is route the audio channel out to a dedicated output on your audio interface, and then physically connect an audio cable from that output to the SMPTE LTC input on your external device. As you can see, Nuendo has some very powerful capabilities when it comes to synchronization with other devices you may be using within your studio. Whether you're syncing to a digibeta deck to edit audio on an upcoming film, or simply want to sync up an old classic analog step sequencer via MIDI, Nuendo provides you with the necessary format support to make it all possible.